Welcome to the Big Scientist channel, where we explore the why so you know how. Today, we are diving into the science of deliciously chewy, light and delicate macarons. So make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell to stay up to date on all the delicious science. Now let's get into it. So we're actually going to start off this recipe by making a meringue. Now a meringue is egg whites that have been beaten to incorporate air, which creates a nice, fluffy, stable foam. Now the big question is, why does beating egg whites create a foam? So egg whites actually contain about 88% water and about 11% proteins. The proteins in egg whites are naturally tightly wound up coils that float around in the water of the egg white. And as eggs cook, the proteins begin to denature or unwind. And in doing this, the proteins can create a web, like a mesh web-like structure that can trap things like fats or air, in our case, air cells. So these pockets of air cells throughout the web is seen as a foam to the eye. Now, beating egg whites creates friction, which generates the energy or heat that will cause the protein to cook or denature. So that's what's going to cause our proteins to unwind. Now, the longer the egg whites are beaten, the more the proteins denature and the smaller the air cells get because we're whipping it. So the air is being cut down and then we're creating that web, which is capturing the air cells. And with this is also increases the stability of the foam. And additives such as acids, which we added a little bit earlier during our foamy stage, they actually, which for this recipe is cream of tartar, acids tend to decrease the pH, which increases the stability of foam by helping the foam to inhibit the protein's ability to coagulate or clump together. So if you've seen like scrambled eggs cooked, they tend to get clumpy, like they clump together. That's because the proteins coagulate as they denature. But when we add our acid, we inhibit this so that we can get a nice flowy mesh web instead of kind of clumpy pieces. So that's why we're adding our cream of tartar acid. And you don't have to add it, it just does help stabilize the foam. Meringues are actually very delicate creations, and things as simple as temperature, sugar, and fats all can have an effect on your final meringue product. The temperature of your egg whites when you start beating them actually has an influence on how much volume you get and how big of a peaks you get when you beat your egg whites. So the colder the egg whites, the more surface tension, which creates a smaller volume and smaller peaks. If your egg whites are room temperature, you have less surface tension and you get a larger volume and larger peaks. Now sugar, when added to the egg whites, it should be added slowly, and it also should be added during the soft peak phase, or the phase before you really start getting those stiff peaks. This is because if you add sugar too early, it can actually cause less intermolecular bonding of the egg proteins, more stable, but less volume. And fats actually really interfere with the alignment of the proteins because they start incorporating instead of the air cells. And this is why it's actually important to make sure you have no egg yolk in your egg whites, because egg yolks actually have a high percentage of fats, and to make sure your bowl is clean of any fats before you start. Now we're going to go ahead and prepare our dry ingredients. So here in this bowl I have our almond flour and the powdered sugar mixed together. And you want to sift this pretty thoroughly. I sifted it one time into this bowl, and now we're going to sift it again into this other bowl. You want to make sure it's nicely sifted because we want a very fine texture to our macarons. We don't want clumpy macarons or anything that's going to weigh it down. Because if we have any clumps in it, because the meringue is so delicate, it'll either cause it to deflate or have pockets or just be really grainy. So we do want to make sure it's nice and thoroughly sifted before we start. So now we're going into a little bit more difficult part, and this is folding the meringue in. So we're going to fold the meringue in to the sifted almond flour and sugar mixture very gently, and do it in parts. So I did about 4 parts, I believe, 3 to 4 parts, but you want to do at least 3 parts adding in your meringue. So you want to add it in and then fold the meringue very gently into the almond and powdered sugar mixture. And what you want to do is you want to go around the sides, scrape the bowl, and then go down the middle to make kind of like a semicircle and then down the middle motion. And this is called macaronage. And so this technique is how you gently fold in your meringue without overly whipping it so you're not, or stirring it so you're not deflating all those air bubbles that we work so hard to get into our meringue. and not overworking the dough. Because if you overwork, the batter, if you overwork the batter, then your macaroons will not come out correctly. They'll either be hollow, they won't rise. So we want to make sure that we're keeping as much air as possible, but also gently folding in the meringue into the batter. Now it's important to check the consistency of your batter throughout and be very, very patient. So you want to constantly check the consistency to make sure that you're getting the right consistency and we don't go overboard with the macaronaging. So it's important to be consistent and to be very patient and work slowly. So the perfect consistency, when you reach the perfect consistency of your macaron batter, it will fall off the spatula and you'll be able to create like a figure 8 motion without it dropping off in clumps. It'll be continuous flowing motion. You'll be able to at least make one figure 8, if not 2 or 3. And when the batter falls off of the spatula in that figure 8 motion into the larger bowl of batter, it will stay on top of the larger batter without incorporating right away. It'll take it a few seconds to actually start like kind of melting or incorporating back into the batter. So that's what we're looking for. And as you can see, I'm mixing it. I'm going around the bowl and then bringing it down the middle. And that's the macaronage phase. Technique. And so you want to do that, and then you want to continuously pick up your spatula. And like I said, check to see if the batter is falling off the spatula in a continuous flowy motion. If it's falling off in clumps, like if it's just clumping off the spatula, then you need to continue to work the batter like it is here. So you see it's just a big clump. It's not really a continuous flow. It clumps off. So we're going to continue, mix it a few more times and then check again. You want to mix probably 1, 2 to 3 times and then check again. Don't mix for too long before you check again, because once you hit that spot where it's falling off the spatula in a figure 8 motion very smoothly and it's laying on top of the batter for a little bit before actually melting back in, you want to stop immediately because you've hit the sweet spot. As I mentioned, this does take time and patience, so I'm just going to let the video go a little bit so you guys can see the process, so you can see kind of in real time how long it actually kind of takes. Obviously, I cut out some clips for time, but it does take a while, so just be prepared and don't get too stressed out. Just keep working with it and keep checking. Just constantly check, and you'll get there eventually. It might seem like it's taking forever, but just keep checking it. I'd like to take a moment real quick just to say, if you guys enjoy this content, if you enjoy learning the science behind all the things you're baking or your favorite foods, please go ahead and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date on all the science. We love putting out more content and science for you guys to learn and enjoy, so please continue to follow us on all of our platforms: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and we look forward to making more videos for you. So once we reach the stage of the batter being able to make that figure 8 pattern, as you saw, we can go ahead and fill our piping bag. And you just want to fill your piping bag with the batter. You don't want to mix anything. I just kind of scoop and fill with my spatula. I'm not trying to work the batter anymore. I'm not trying to do any extra stirring. You want to make sure you're just putting it directly into the piping bag without causing any more agitation to it, so we don't beat out any more of the air bubbles or the air cells that we incorporated, and we don't overmix it and cause it to be tough. Now that the piping bag is filled, we can move on to the next step. So you want to go ahead and pipe your macaroons onto a parchment lined baking sheet, and you can do kind of whatever size shape you want. Just make sure they're pretty identical, because you want them all to cook at the same time, and you want to be able to sandwich the cookies together in a cookie sandwich. So you want them to be about the same size as well for that. So once you have all your shells piped, we're going to go ahead and bang the tray onto the counter about 2 to 3 times, and this is just to help release any of the air bubbles, as they can cause cracking when baking. And what I like to do for my next step is actually let the macaroons sit out on the counter for a little bit, about 30 minutes, to create a skin on top. And this isn't a necessary step, but I like to do it because it tends to help the macaroons rise in a uniform way, and it also keeps the tops from cracking. But again, you can bake them right away if you want to. If you find luck with that, go ahead. I just like to do that step. The macaroons should then be baked at about 300 degrees Fahrenheit or 149 degrees Celsius for about 12 to 15 minutes. And this really just depends on your oven. You want to rotate the baking sheet halfway through the bake, And you want to make sure they're not underbaked or overbaked. In order to check the doneness, what you want to do is you just want to touch the top of one of the macarons, and if it wiggles, then it's overdone or it's underdone. If it doesn't move, then it's cooked perfectly, and you don't want any browning on the top. So if you got browning, then it's overcooked. Once the macarons are done, you want to leave them on the baking sheet to cool completely before transferring them to a baking rack and filling them. And here it is, delicate yet crisp and chewy, melt in your mouth macarons. We hope you enjoyed learning the science behind this delicious treat. Please subscribe to our channel for more sciencey deliciousness. And until next time, happy baking!